Good morning, supply chain. Welcome to the Old Dogs Logistics Podcast. I am your co-host, John Brewer, here with my buddy, Jeff Dickinson. Hey, Jeff, how's your Friday going, buddy?
That's a good question. That's a damn good question, my friend. I'm going to find out after this podcast. Let's put it up to now, it's not that bad. But yeah, after this podcast, I make a phone call. That's either going to make my day or definitely break it. So
I'm definitely getting it on both ends of the country myself, dealing with the wildfires out in LA, and now we're getting the snowmageddon here in Nashville, and we go creeping on over to the East Coast very soon. So we're dealing with a lot of store closures. And one of the things I was thinking about, we doing this free for all Friday.
yeah,
Is, one of the roles that my team and I play during these what I call just natural disasters
yeah,
is we're kind of a conduit between our distributors and our restaurants. The one thing we don't want to have happen out there in these types of situations is have drivers trying to deliver to dark stores, stores that are without power, stores that that close because of inclement weather,
yeah.
and we're already battling with these drivers trying to get these routes delivered as it is. So we're already seeing delays, and they're dealing with all the elements out there. And so it becomes uber critical that we keep those comm lines open. So part of our responsibility in the middle of all this is to make sure, number one, we communicate the dark restaurants to our distributors, and number two, we communicate to our field ops as well as our restaurants of any delays in the routings for our distributors, so they know when they're supposed to expect their product. So just something to be mindful of if you're not in this industry, you don't really think about, but it's these little bitty communication pieces are become uber critical during these times. What's your
Oh,
thoughts
yeah.
on what's your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Oh, I definitely agree. And you know what? When emergencies like this happen, and they get the order like to evacuate, the last thing they have on their mind, unfortunately, is making a phone call
That's
to give
right.
you to giving you an update. Hey, John, we're closing. You don't know that, and you may have a driver en route on their way there, and the next thing you know, they get into the area. The area is all blocked off. Well, what are you going to do in that situation? Because you're now dealing with the unknown because you didn't know it up front, or you would have contacted the carrier and saying, hey, they're closed. Such and such a road is closed down. Don't go down highway, blah, 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 whatever, turn around. Do you pay them? Or,
Absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely, you pay them. They're out there. With our situation, we have multiple stops on every route. So even
Yeah.
if one store is dark, the driver will probably try to make it to the next store. Now it does become cumbersome because you're constantly going around that freight as you're delivering because it's
Yes.
on the tail, and the next stop is obviously behind it.
Yep.
So it becomes painful, but it's not catastrophic. So, but yeah, we make sure, our distributors, trans teams are checking the roads and checking the weather and everything. So they're communicating to their drivers, hey, this road's closed, that road's closed. You can't do this, you can't do that. Or, we're going to delay routes 24 hours because of road conditions. And they'll reach out and to our stores and let them know, hey, your stuff's coming 24 hours later. And usually we rarely have people get too upset about that because they, to your point earlier offline, they understand the conditions that are
Mm-hmm.
going on and they're being impacted too.
Yep.
So we get a lot of cooperation that way. But yeah, to your point, if you're especially like on the LA wildfires, if your home is burning down, you're not thinking about picking up the phone and calling the distributor and telling them, hey, we're closed.
Yeah.
But what we do have is we have a pretty good network of field ops personnel,
Mm-hmm.
and during these types of situations, they'll reach out to the restaurant owners and say, "Hey, are you closed? Are you not?" So they're kind of blanketing the field out there. They're calling because you're right. I'm not thinking about calling somebody if if my house is on fire. But
No.
if I have my cell number and I'm trying to get out of town, oh yeah, we're closed. And then they bring that information back to us. And then we, like I said, operate as that conduit and we get that to the distributors as quickly as possible so that they can make their changes and any detours they need to make.
Yeah, and I have a big client that's out there in Southern California, and because it's dedicated, I have a lot of my drivers and carriers that are in the local areas, so they can do the swap and hook and drop and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, as I was telling you a little bit earlier and showed you the email that I got, they got emergency evacuation orders, so it's like, do you pick up the freight if you're a driver, right? and hit the road and hope for the best, or you go, screw it, man, my family's coming first, which we know, right? That's what they're going to say.
Right.
And when you have a company that's in that vicinity that's huge, you gotta think that a lot of their employees are also from that area too that are getting affected.
Right.
It has a huge impact on operations. Where you go into we were talking about that earlier, emergency planning. How many people have that in place in case something like that comes up? Especially if you're in a drought area and there's been a lot of fires and stuff. Do you look at the what ifs?
Right.
Do you take them into consideration? Because the show goes on, right? You have to figure things out, and it's those act of God, things that you don't have control over.
Nope.
You look at what those fires out there, and most of them are not under control.
Right.
There's maybe a couple that they bit into, but this stuff is like, it several $1 billion easily. When you're driving down the highway, you've seen the videos, I've seen the videos, and these are oceanfront homes that are gone for miles. We're not talking like a city block. We're talking for miles, because this guy is driving in his car and he's looking on both sides, just smoldering ruins on both sides, like for several minutes at a time. And when you're in a car, it doesn't take that long to go a mile, to driving. And when you see a 7, 8, 9 minute video of just devastation, you're talking several miles.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and in those types of situations, you're 100% correct. You can't control what Mother Nature does or does not do. The only thing, and you know this as well as I do, the only thing you control is the controllables. And I think the two major controllables in an emergency type situation are going to be comms and safety. And you can control both of those. You can take proactive measures to do both of those. And, absolutely, human life is the most valuable thing on the planet. Nothing else even comes close. And you want your drivers to be safe. You want your warehouse workers. You want their families to be safe. And you can control that. You can put preventative measures in place. One of the things I've always done as a shipper is, the driver has final say on the safety of his truck and himself.
Oh, yeah.
And, regardless of what he's moving for me or what company I work for, if the driver doesn't think it's safe to continue to move and he shuts down, you're not going to hear anything from me.
Nope.
It's unfortunate. I hate it, but I don't want that driver to lose his life over whatever he's hauling for me in the back of it. So every place I've been, it's always been that way. The driver's, the dispatcher calls me up and says, "Hey man, my driver said he felt like it was unsafe. He's shutting down for the night." Good. Thank you for the information. I'll let my customer know, but I'm not going to tell him, no, you need to keep going. I'm not going to tell him that.
No way.
No way.
No way.
And then with me being in food, and we've touched on food security and food safety a few times. When me being in food, if the warehouse manager calls me up and says, "Hey John, this trailer's got a pretty nasty smell, or it's got metal shavings on the floor," and if that warehouse manager, or even an inbound for that matter, if the seal is broken,
yep,
if that warehouse manager tells me, he says, I don't feel comfortable loading this truck, or I don't feel comfortable unloading this truck, that word stands. I don't override that word, because he's helping me with food safety, and he knows how critical that is. And I'm going to rely on him because he's boots on ground. So
Yeah.
the only time in my previous job that we had that we were okay, well, we had to research it, but we were okay because the seal was broken, was product coming in from Canada. So occasionally the Canadian Border Patrol would pop the seal and inspect the load and then reseal it. And when the driver got to the final destination, the warehouse manager calls me up, says, hey, seal's broken. I tell him, shoot me a picture of the seal. And it's got, CBP stamped on the seal, which is Canadian Border Patrol. So I know customs broke the seal, and I'm like, okay, that one's okay. But everything else, no. The driver shows up with no seal or broken seal, no. We're not going to risk it. Any brand is worth more than that. And you don't know if somebody snuck in there and poisoned it, or, disturbed it, or whatever. So absolutely. Safety is 100%. You and I are always been on the same page with that.
Absolutely. I mean, and don't forget, depending upon what kind of produce that's in those reefers, you have to do the pulp test too, and it has to be able to meet a certain requirement within a certain limit. And if it's not in that range, they can refuse the whole shipment.
Yeah, we do temp tags at the tail, in the middle, and at the nose.
Yep.
And if they're not in range, absolutely. My QA team, that's when they get involved, because I'm not going to make that call. I let them decide whether they should make the call or not. And again, it goes back to food safety. It's a lot of liability if you make the wrong call. And it's, there are people who have signed on to do that kind of stuff. I don't have the courage to determine whether my fellow human beings may or may not get sick on food. I don't want that responsibility.
No, I wouldn't want it either, and that brings up another question too. We were talking about safety, and you have this snow and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I got updates, overnight and stuff that, hey, I'm on I-40 and the roads are treacherous. We're going at 5 miles an hour. I decided to stop the truck. I pulled off to the side of the road. I'm like, definitely, do not drive in this. Do not take that risk. But now when you think about, and that's dry. Now you think about when roads and highways get shut down for multiple days because of heavy snowfall, right? And you've got produce, and you've got limited amount of hours per se on a reefer load when it's full of gas. What do you do when you're sitting out there for 48 hours, and that fuel runs out?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know of anything you could do.
Right. I mean, it's like, so what do? You pay them, right? You're going to pay them anyway. It's not your fault. There's no reason why the receiver should bitch, moan, and complain to you because it's an act of God. Hey, maybe, Mr. Vendor, if I was God, I could have corrected this and made that storm go away and you would have had your product in line. But you know what? I'm not blessed that well. I'm not God yet, so I can't make those decisions. But, some people, like we talked many weeks ago about on-time delivery performance and what's acceptable of gross and net.
Right.
And taking those, those exceptions to heart and having them as accountability. But a lot of shippers don't do that. Their main goal is it has to be here, must arrive by date, or must arrive by time on a specific date, etc. And there's no excuses for them. I mean, there's a lot of hard asses out there. It's just like, what do you do? I'm not going to your point, I'm not going to jeopardize the driver's life and telling them I don't care in high water. Instead of doing 60, do 90. I know you were just in a snowstorm. You got to make up time. No, I'm not going to do that.
No.
Who wants to deal with somebody like that?
No. As I can speak for myself as a shipper. for a long time. You know, as long as you looked at the data and got down into the details. I mean, if you saw, you know, if you're looking at your KPIs and your own time delivery is not where it needs to be, the first thing you need to do is go into the detail, the shipping detail. And, you know, most times, at least, you know, our carriers would put, you know, the reasons why this load was delayed or that load was delayed. And if it was, you know, a hurricane or snowstorm, or, you know, the fires had cut off the roads, whatever it was, the paths. In my, you dipped below our agreed upon percentage, but it wasn't anything you could control. And if I get asked about it internally, I'm gonna say, well, you know, hurricane such and such was coming through, so we had to stop and wait. And I usually don't get any pushback.
No, but now when you think about it, and two things, what I would do in that situation, with a reefer being stuck in a snowstorm for like 48 hours and running out of gas. One, pay the carrier. Secondly, I'd write that off.
Yeah, it's gone.
Write it off. And that was number one, and write it off. Number two would be, I would already be creating another PO,
Right.
get another shipment ready and on the road. You know,
Right.
if it was a single, I'm going team,
Yep.
because they got to get that thing in there. There's these trigger mechanisms that must be met, you know, but it takes a lot of communication. You know, it's just not, hey, I've been sitting here for 48 hours, want to let you know. No, you need to call up and let me know that you're pulling off the side of the road, that they shut it down, you know, the DOT or whatever shut it down, that it doesn't look like you're going to be moving for 24, 36 hours. Next question, how much fuel do you have in your tank? You know, they'll have to go and take a look at fuel levels, and they'll come back and say, I got another 6 hours. You know, where's the nearest fuel station? You know, well, does that really count? Because I don't think that it's going to be open for me to get gas to fill up that tank.
Or even
Okay.
even have gas in their tanks to fill your tanks.
Right. And you know, then you have to, like, how much gas do you have? Do you have a siphon? You know, I mean, how many people like that have prepared for those situations over the winter months? It could be any time during the year when hurricane or floods or anything, and getting rerouted and, you know, all that stuff. And it's those things that you got to really think about, you know, and do that plan. You may never use that plan, but if you have something
have it in place.
that's, you know, the fail safe, where it's like, okay, I got notice, you know, guys, you know, on the picking team, you need to go repick this order. I'm going to get another backup carrier, or maybe the same carrier, to bring in another reefer. Let's go. Let's pack this thing up. You know, hey, John, listen, I'm sorry, but our carrier is stuck on I-40. Doesn't look like they're going to open up for 48 hours. So this is what I'm going to do, because guy's running out of reefer fuel. I'm going to get the carrier to drop another reefer. We'll make a PO number 2 or whatever. Don't worry about number 1. We're going to move it from a single to a team, and we're going to get that rolling ASAP. We're picking it right now. Just want to let you know. As soon as it leaves our docks, I'm going to give you a quick call. Going to let you know, and I'll give you the ETA on it. You know, it's normally 5-day. We're going to try to get out there in 2.5 days. That work for you?
All right.
That's it, right?
It's like, and I know you probably feel this too. It's like when something like this happens, you kind of, you've developed a specific mode that you get into, and you start thinking, just like you've been sharing here the last few minutes, your mind starts thinking, okay, I got to do X, got to do Y. And it's just, to me, it's a mode. I mean, I'm not in this mode every day of every week, because I'm not dealing with natural disasters every day of the week.
Right.
Thank God.
Yeah.
But it's different than regular operations. You automatically start thinking, you know, what do I got to do? Where do I got to be? What do I got to, you know, and then use, like I said, controlling those controllables and making sure, to your point a minute ago, those comms are going out and the carriers are safe.
Hmm.
and then just try and take care of the customer as best you can. And most times, I don't think I've ever come across a time in my entire career where the customer got upset because you got held up by a natural disaster. I don't think I ever caught any flack. You know, what you mean you can't? What do you mean you tell them to go? I never had that conversation. I don't know how I would react if I had that conversation. I'd probably be looking for a new customer at the
Yeah,
end
yeah,
of it,
and
because if they value their products over human life, you probably don't want to do business with them.
well, when you're a new traffic manager or logistics manager and you're getting into that office and putting yourself in harm's way, literally, literally,
Exactly.
um, some of them are going to go, I don't give a shit what you do. You get a solution. You go and get that in there. I don't care, what you need to do. You tell your driver he needs to what? Wrong, because the traffic manager, all puffed up and everything, wants to make himself like Superman and get his point. Don't worry about it, John. I've got this handled and we'll get it taken care of for you, and it's destroying relationships the whole time instead of going to your CEO, or the president or whomever you report to and saying, we've got a major problem. This is what I'm facing. It's not going to happen. This is what I'm going to do, and tell them and sell it. I mean, that's when you get involved with matrix selling. It's not just on one level, it's multi-tiered. That shows that you've got the communication across all levels, that there's a pure understanding and they know the work instruction and the process, that you develop, that you're going to implement when these things happen, but you got to get the buy-in. It's that buy-in across matrix teams. It's not after the fact, it's before the fact. So they know when that happens, they know what to expect and how you're going to adjust that. That all comes from learning and experience. Did I fail as a young guy in it? Hell yeah. Absolutely. Just what I said, come hell and high water, I always felt that it was my responsibility. It still is my responsibility, but I went about it in all the wrong ways, and that's when I got my ass kicked, and that's fine, and when I tell people this, it's not like I'm blowing smoke up someone's ass. No, it's going to happen. And this is how you avoid that. And this is what you should be doing. Try to help people out. I just don't say it for the hell of saying it because it's fun or it sounds funny or whatever, and it's unbelievable. No, it's true to fact. And that's what's missing in a lot of communication across many sectors of this industry.
Absolutely. And even I was thinking while you were speaking there, my last company I worked for, they were proactive. They had us put together a disaster plan,
Mhm.
albeit somewhat generic because you don't know what disaster is fixing to hit you next, right?
Right.
But we had a disaster plan in place, and once something hit the disasters, our plan went into work, and we were thinking, each segment of our operation had to do their part of the disaster plan, and what are you going to do? What's the steps? How do we react? How do we get back to where we need to be? And that got enacted, and that was done. We had that done before any disasters, started hitting us. So we had a plan going into it. And then you had, to your point, if you have experienced individuals within your organization who are used to dealing with hurricanes and snowstorms and fires and floods, then they're already in their mind, going to go into that mode, as I mentioned, and they're going to enact that the disaster plan. Their piece of it, they probably already have memorized in their head what to do because
Mm-hmm.
they've done it more than once. I always tell people, this isn't my first rodeo, so I figured you could relate to that one.
I definitely can.
So they're looking at me, and I'm like, this is we've done this before, right? It's funny, and even when you talk about younger, newer transportation managers and logistics managers, I can tell you probably the first 5 or so years of my life, every time something like this hit the fan, I was freaking out. I was nervous. I was tense. I was trying to make sure I did everything. But
Hell yeah.
the longer you're in this business, you come in there and say, "Hey, man, we're dealing with a hurricane. XYZ is happening." There's very little emotion in my voice. It's because I'm used to it. I've done it, and it's kind of throws people off because they're like, "Well, why aren't you upset?" And I'm like, "Well, being upset isn't going to get the job done."
Not gonna- and that's why I always said, that's one of the reasons I got a high blood pressure. Like I think I told you it was 210 over like 130 at one time because I took everything to heart. You're talking about emotions. This was like 25, 30 years ago when I did that. I was maybe 32 years, whatever, close enough. I didn't delegate well. I always thought that nobody could do it better than me. So I took it upon myself. You talk about the control of controllables, right? I controlled everything, because I always thought that my head was on a chopping board on everything that was done. And, I had great mentors and coaches and very good constructive disciplinarians, which everybody needs in their operations, seriously. And I got my ass kicked, and then I said to myself a long time ago, I'm not going to give a shit, but in a very good way. Yes, I'm going to care, but I'm not going to care that way. That's where I learned deeply how to control the controllables. Like you said, emotions shouldn't be part of the process in the decision making. It should be absolutely absent. Done. This is the data. This is the way that it works and how we're going either to prevent it or react to it if and when it happens, and that's how you get things done, because people start bickering, moaning, complaining, arguing, disagreeing, you name it. But if they know it up front, they already know what kind of mode, like you said, you're going to go into and how you're going to react to a situation. It was just like one a long time ago where I had a Ford Motor plant that was going to shut down the assembly line. And I had a train coming from Seattle through Montanas and the Dakotas. And, they don't call it the frozen tundra for anything. And they had a coupler that froze. And it had a very important COFC container on there. And the train wouldn't move or whatever, but it was creeping. So I forgot, white, black, something terminal. I forgot. It was something up in Montana. And I called up the UP, and I had a very good friend way back. He's probably retired. Maybe he passed away. I don't know. But I was much younger than him. And I said to him, hey, can you get this to a terminal? Like, how far away are you from the nearest terminal? And I made phone calls, and I got a roadworthy OTR chassis. Right. And I had them lift the COFC off at that terminal, put it on an OTR and team OTR chassis, and shot it to St. Louis. Those are the type of things that you react to. You have to find those solutions on all those things. People don't think about that. You got to run through those. You learn it over time. Right. You definitely learn it over time. And, that's one of the reasons why I didn't get pigeonholed in my career, John, into one specific mode, one specific vertical, because then I'd be limited. I want to know a little bit about a lot of things in case something came up where I'd be able to have an intelligent conversation with somebody to say, yeah, I saw this before, or, hey, how about this option? This may be a solution. You know what? I ran into this X years ago, and this is how we did it. Do you think we can do it? That kind of stuff, throwing them out there. But it's so important, like you and I talk about all the time, about that knowledge, gaining that knowledge, sharing that research, doing your homework, all this kind of stuff to prepare yourself for the inevitable. Because in logistics, the high probability of getting blindsided is well over 100%. It's something. 100%, 100%. Every day something's going to happen. You don't know when it's going to happen, at what time or whatever, but it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Yeah, it's like ability to be blindsided should be a job requirement. The other thing you mentioned, you were talking about you wanted to control everything, and how it affected your health. And you're exactly right. Those types of people also create bottlenecks within the system. One of the things that's really helped me out in my career is really understanding the strengths and weaknesses of my team and
Yes.
and mentoring them.
Mhm.
And so what I will do when I delegate, I kind of use a rule of thumb. It's not anything written down or processed, but if the action is, complex, or if the action is highly visible internally, then I will take that. But I also know what my team can do, and those projects that are less complex, or you can break them down into bites,
Mhm.
or they're not really visible from the C-suite. Nobody's
Right.
really paying a lot of attention to them. I can delegate those to my staff. I know what they're capable of. I know what they can do, and you're constantly building on that through mentorship, because you obviously, you want to get those individuals to a level that they can replace you if needed.
Mhm.
Uh, and so they need to know what you need and what you know. And then you take those complex operations down and say, okay, I need you to do X. I'm going to go do Y, and we're going to
Mhm.
come together and we're going to make Z.
Right.
And Z is, part of the complexity of it. But if you break it down into simple steps, it becomes easier. And if they're not as long in the career as you are and don't have the experience you do, those simple steps, you're building on an education, right? It's all building blocks. Everything is a building block.
Right.
And you're increasing their experience, you're increasing their skill sets while you're doing this. And then also the other piece of it is, and a lot of the older generations tend to forget to do this, is why are we doing X and Y? And what do we plan on X and Y becoming? So you got to give them the why. Why are you making me paint the fence? Well, I'm making you paint the fence because we got to build the house, and that's part of it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But explain the why to them. So, and the process that's kind of in your mind, kind of unpack that for them so that they can see, hey, why are we doing it this way?
Right.
Well, we're doing it this way because of X, Y, and Z. And then also foster an open comment environment to where they feel comfortable and say, hey, John, I understand you want to do it A, B, C, but if you move C to the front, it's going to cut 2 hours off our work, because they have a different perspective. They grew up differently than you did. They can see things that you can't see. And a lot of the times when me and my team attack a project, it's not all me. It's not John's way or the highway.
Right.
It's we took the best of all my team members, their best ideas and my best ideas, and we cobbled them together. And now we have something that's 3 times as better as it was if I'd have just said, okay, this is how we're going to do it.
Right.
And I will literally have meetings. We'll get a project handed to us, and we're not quite sure which direction, how we want to handle it. I will literally have a meeting with my team and say, okay, this is what we're doing. What are your thoughts? I will literally ask them, what do you think? What do you think would be a good way to do this? And they're in that environment. They know they're not going to get their heads bit off if they say something. They know if they don't agree with me that I'm not going to get upset and yell at them.
Right.
I want to know what they're thinking, because 9 times out of 10, they've got something, they can add on, or it's better.
Absolutely.
We should go that direction. It was funny when I first started with this organization. I inherited my team. They had already hired them, a couple of younger guys. I think one was in his early 30s, the other one was mid 20s, and of course, me being the old dog. And we're sitting here in my office, and I'm looking at them. This is the thing I came up with, and this has really been my mantra all along, ever since we started talking about different generations. And I looked at them square in the face, and I said, you guys have unique and innovative ways to detonate the landmine. And I got the map. and together we're going to be one hell of a force.
Yeah, you know what? I could not agree with you more, and that's when you become a leader, because you rely so much on your team, and your team represents you, and you're only as good as your team. And a lot of managers, don't know how to share the wealth, as far as accountability and who did what and when. They like to take it upon themselves, but the biggest thing that you can do as a leader, as an organization, is bring your troops in from the trenches into these high level meetings, because to your point, they're in the trenches day in and day out. They're the touchy feely people. They're interacting, they're making the moves, because they're involved into the systems and all of that. Yes, you as a leader should be as well, because you should know the systems better than they do. But it's a whole different perspective, to your point, by bringing them in and asking them directly, well, what do you think about this idea? And they would tell you, well, you know what, I've been doing it for X amount of months or years, and this is what I found out. And if we did this, it's going to affect downstream over here. And here's the reason why. Those are credible things. And then when things happen and they go, Jeff, good job. No, it wasn't me.
Exactly.
I didn't. It was John.
Exactly.
John's the one that brought that up. Which was a fantastic idea. And that's why we were able to move forward quicker than ever before. That's what a good leader does.
You give them the props. Yes,
Right.
sir. 100%.
Yep.
Don't take credit for anything they do. Give them props, especially if you're in senior leadership situation where you're debriefing C-suite or whatever.
Yep.
And they, well, that's a great idea. And I'm like, no, sir, that was from my team member, Mark, over here.
Yep.
He came up with that, and we thought it was a real good idea, so we ran with it, and that's why we were successful at it. But absolutely, you want them to get that recognition, and bring them into the big project meetings. If your team is part of this big project like I'm dealing with right now, have them sit in.
Absolutely.
So, number one, they understand how the project works. Number two, they're getting an education. I mean, even if it's not something they're necessarily doing on the day-to-day, they still need to understand how all the big cogs work together and how the machine runs. And it educates. They get, it also helps. The thing I like about it, it does two things. Okay. Number one, it builds camaraderie.
Yes.
It builds the relationships. And the tighter you are with your team, the more successful you're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, they know they've got skin in the game. They're a stakeholder. They know they're a contributor, because so many companies, especially the huge ones, how does my role down here at the 10th ladder rung impact the company? How does my role play into that? What position on the team do I play?
Right.
And that will breed stakeholder buy-in. And like I said, my team, both of my teammates will grab the ball and run, because number one, they've got the experience and the skill set, and they know what to do if situation A happens. And B, they're making well-informed decisions because they have a well-rounded understanding of the operation in any big major project.
Yeah. Yeah. And, to go back to what you were saying earlier about them knowing their job, and what I did, John, was I had each person in that department write their own JD and their work instruction of how to do their job. Right. And that helps you as a leader to find out where the loopholes are in the process, or what they're doing, and how do you identify that. So each individual writes what they think their job description is, and then how to do their job in work instruction. You take that work instruction and that JD and you give it to that person in another department. You go, do his job. And that person goes and does his job, and they find out this doesn't work. Or to get another second set of eyes on that and saying, you know what, this is similar to over there. We're using the same tools, but this is what I found out of a quick way of getting and it helps to develop that individual who you may think knows their job well, but not well enough, because you uncover the hidden, what I call the hidden bank opportunities. You hear me mention that all the time.
Right.
And it's identifying those things that are critical to the role that either aren't being used or aren't being talked about. And that helps out a lot. And then especially when somebody's out, get hit by a bus, can't make it to work for some reason or another person can jump right into their role and do their role very effectively without, thinking and blowing your mind like, oh no, what am I going to do now? Does that mean I have to jump in there and all that? Sometimes you have to do that, but it does help you find a lot of loopholes in the process of what they think they know that they don't.
Right. Exactly. It'll also find weaknesses in the written process itself that you need to shore up.
Yes. And the way I had my guys do it is I got down to keystrokes, at the F toolbar, all that different. I mean, when you do this is the stroke that you do to get there, to get to that part of SAP or whatever it might be, and then it's like, no, I don't use that F key, I use this, and it gets there even quicker because it eliminates a step. There's so many different things that right. you find out and uncover. And I had this conversation with another individual in the beginning of the week, and she said that she would implement that, because it could help out the operations greatly by identifying, some issues in what they think, like I said, what they think they know, but they don't.
Right. Right. And then, if one of my teammates, if they're working on something and they're struggling a little bit, maybe it's new to them, maybe it's something they may know part of it, but don't know all of it. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll pull them to the side and say, hey, let's me and you figure this out together. Between the two of us, we'll get an understanding, and they know, oh, okay, that's how I do it. Yeah. Okay. I don't know, surprisingly, and you're going to find this really surprising, Jeff, I don't know everything. Okay.
Either do I. I mean, I don't want to know it. I don't want to know everything. I don't want to know everything, but I want to know a little bit of a lot.
Yeah. I usually have a starting point. I know where I want to get to. I may not have all the steps to get there, but I know pretty much this is the end result, and we got to kind of reverse engineer it to get to the start point. So that's how I've always done my business, because you get handed, to your point, you get handed stuff all the time. I mean, when I first started with my current company, my team and I had distribution experience. I had distribution of food experience, but this was a whole new animal. I mean, it still had the foundation of supply chain, but the nuances were all new to us.
Yeah.
And the running joke was, we'd get handed something and we're sitting there looking at each other like, deer in headlights. And I'm like, they'd ask me, what are we going to do? And I was like, we'll figure this shit out.
I'm gonna do a little Ralph Cramden.
we'll figure this shit out. We always do, and that's the running joke, because everything we get handed, even if we don't know how to do it, we have the skill set and the resourcefulness to go figure it out and then come back and just do it.
Yeah.
And as long as you have that resourcefulness and you've got those connections to your supply chain family, not just within the four walls, but on LinkedIn and everything else. And all you got to do is just go research it and figure it out. Ask somebody, look it up, Google it. I always say Google it, which is ironic coming from me. But anyway.
No, you're right. You're right. And it's like when I have, when I talk to prospects or clients and they ask me a question, I'm like the first one to say, because my honesty, integrity is most important to me, and especially my transparency. And if I don't know something, I'm man enough to say, I don't know, but I have a ton of contacts, and I'm going to find out and get back to ASAP on that, because it's a great point. And, I want to meet your needs or whatever. Give me a few minutes. I'll give you a quick call back and I'll make that phone call. But unfortunately, a lot of people that are out there in the industry can't man up enough to say when they're wrong.
Right.
It takes an incredible amount of effort to say, dude, man, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. I thought I was going to be right on this, and man, I really effed up bad. I can do that, but it's that risk reward. I didn't get here by osmosis. I threw myself into the freaking, I threw myself into the fire that chance, even in situations I didn't know. To your point, I was like, screw it. I don't want to stock shelves and drive a forklift and load trucks for the rest of my life. And when my daughter was born a very long time ago, it's like, no, light bulb went off and boom, out into the wilderness, literally. It's like, what's that show, Naked and whatever?
Afraid, naked and afraid.
Naked and afraid. I mean, it's seriously, I just went out and took that dive. Did I get the crap beat out of me? Oh, hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. That's where I got the high blood pressure and all that stuff. But I learned to work through it, when it's baptismal by fire, as I put it. It's like, if you want to succeed and move forward in this industry, you must take chances. You must learn every single day and be like a sponge and absorb and absorb and absorb, and take risk. It's going to be one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. It will beat the crap out of you. But when you come out of that hole, you'll be a whole different person,
Right.
a whole different perspective on the industry itself.
You got to be like Bounty paper towels, man. You got to be the quicker picker upper.
that's pretty it. Pretty much it. It's like, if you want to move forward, man, you got to take that. And that's why I'm honest and tell you, you're not going to enjoy the ride. It's going to suck. It's going to suck so bad. But I will tell you that if you do it right and you absorb what you learn and you ask the right questions and you get your ass kicked and you have the right mentors and the coaches in place that believe in you, that's going to lift you up and help you climb, that's why you want to do it. And that's why you have to have emotional intelligence on finding that mentor and that coach and that very good disciplinarian. If you can work for an organization that's highly managed by military people, I highly recommend it. I did it, because they're highly structured, very disciplined, and they have rules in the ways that they do things. And if you learn that, there's no other harder way to be brought up into the industry if you are brought up that way. And I'm glad that I did. It was gruesome. It was hard. That's sleepless nights. It was bad,
Yeah,
but good, very good.
Yeah, I was gonna. You mentioned the suck, and military buddy of mine, Robert Pogue. He's on this platform. He always says, "Embrace the suck," and I like that. That's a military phrase.
Yes,
and that's something that it resonates with me very strongly. And it's like, it's kind of like the battle cry.
That is, go out there every day and get hit with flack.
Yeah.
Seriously, because it helps you to work smarter, not harder, to do more in less time. Until you know how to, fend off that flack, that inbound that's coming in, and learning how to adjust accordingly and to be able to adapt and be a chameleon type kind of leader. That's how you're going to get through it with flying colors. You definitely will, but you're going to bounce, you're going to get hurt, and you're going to have to, absorb the suck, as you say, man. Like it's going to suck.
The other thing, and I was just thinking about it, and time is the enemy of us all, and especially in this industry. And you know, you were mentioning the you know, taking care of a customer who's loaded and bogged down in the snow and in that time.
Yeah.
And in this industry, you know, sense of urgency is like, it better be in your blood. However, one thing I have learned in certain occasions, you know, I'll have this is a previous life example. I'll have, you know, one of my staff come up to me and they're dealing with a situation, and it's not time sensitive critical. I mean, it's a little time sensitive critical, but it's not like DEFCON 1 time sensitive critical.
Right.
It's maybe DEFCON 4. You know, it can be, it has the potential to hit the mountain. The plane has the potential to hit the mountain, but we're like 2 miles away, so we got time to pull up.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go up there, you know, I just sit there and said, give him an hour. Just give him an hour. Just sit and give him an hour. And what would happen is the majority of these DEFCON 4 things would work themselves out and become a non-event, because a light bulb would go on in somebody's head. Oh, how would you do this? This is part of my job. Well, yeah, you're kind of holding up the show there, Sparky. And they would go do their job, and then everything else would fall right back into place. And you really didn't have to do anything. Is all you had to do is just wait it out. Now there's other things to do in that hour. I mean, you know, sure, you're multitasking all the damn time. But sometimes if you don't know exactly what to do, you just kind of give it an hour and see if it works itself out and becomes a non-event. Because I'm like you, man. If I don't have to work on it to make it successful, I don't want to touch it. Just you know, let the successful things happen every day. We'll focus on the unsuccessful.
Right.
And that keeps you from going insane too, because that exception management is a whole lot easier than trying to manage the whole show. And that's what I've been doing my entire career. You know, a lot of people like to have, you know, lead big departments. I'm not that guy. I mean, I can do it. I've done it, but I am more effective with small teams than I have ever been with large ones. And you know, you rely on each other. You know, you do what we've been talking about. You know, you take your, you know, roll up your sleeves and get down in the trenches with them. Sometimes it takes all three of us to do something. Sometimes it's just a couple of us. You know, sometimes we divvy up the task and all three of us go do it. You know, but you can pivot in a heartbeat. You know, you can flip the whole thing around in half an hour or less, and you're completely doing something different because your priorities change. And you know, priorities change in this business like the wind as well. So they're going to change them. But that's how you know, using these small teams, you can move them very quickly and get things done very quickly that maybe a larger team may not be able to turn as fast.
Yeah, so, but you know what? You can't lead from behind a desk.
No. Oh, hell no.
No, you can't do that. You know,
no.
You can't lead if you don't have your finger on the pulse, on the daily pulse, not just the pulse, but the daily pulse. And the other thing too is that you have to be a good listener, but not just to listen, but to listen with intent. Right. That's the optimal word, the intent. So if you're on the floor and you're listening to what's going on in each department, you know, I like medium-sized, large type, you know, departments because I did that in my past. And the thing is being on the floor, having your finger on the pulse and listening with intent to understand, right? Seek to understand and then to be understood. If you can understand what's going on, then you can transition what was said into a very meaningful thing in able to motivate the team to do something without telling them to do it, you know. But when you're absent, the mice play. It's like when the cat's gone, the mice go out to play. So, you know, did I go in my office and manage once in a while? Sure, but I had an open door policy. Whatever I was doing, reports or analyzing something, if my employee walked through that door, they were more important than what my project was, because there was a reason why they walked through that door. So I listened with intent to put everything down so they knew that I was present, that I was a present leader, not an absent leader, you know,
Right.
and that's how you get things done.
Well,
And
I always did, you know, whenever I worked for a company that had the warehouse strapped to the side of the office, I got, it was MBWA, management while walking around. I'll tell you a funny story. So probably like my second or third company in this industry, and I was a traffic coordinator. That's how long ago it was. Um, so I was out, you know, doing my MBWA, and I would make a loop around. I had the whole warehouse. I had shipping and I had trans, and so I'd walk around and hit stop at each of my team areas where people were working. They were doing some function, you know, either they were weighing the skids, or wrapping the skids, or tagging the skids, or loading the skids. And I do kind of a reverse thing, and I'd go back. I would go backwards against the flow of the product. No particular reason. It was just that was where my office was. And I was walking one day, and I'd stop and talk to them, and you know, like you said, listen with intent. You know, make sure they got everything they needed. Make sure they're in good shape. You know, is anything pushing them that, you know, that is anything keeping them from being effective at what they're supposed to do, right?
yep.
So I went to the first station, and these guys are all upset. I mean, they're upset, and I don't know why they're upset. And so I sit there talking to them, and they tell me, you know, they don't tell me anything. They just say, "Well, you know, we just heard that blah 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 blah." And I'm like, "No, that's not right. Just keep doing what you're doing."
Yeah.
And so I get them calmed down, and I go to the next station. Same situation. Like, what the hell, man? You know, is this like Friday the 13th or what? You know, is there a dark cloud over the building? And they're all upset. And I'm like, what are you guys upset about? And they're going, well, we just heard we were supposed to be doing blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, just keep doing what you're doing. And this went on through the whole stations, all my stations. And I look down, I get to the end of the stations where my stuff is done. And I look down towards the manufacturing side of the building. There's my boss walking towards his office up front. And I intercepted him and I said, have you had conversations out on the floor? He said, yeah. So would you please go back to your office? You're pissing them off and I can't get my work done.
That's pretty funny. That's hilarious.
He stirred every hornet's nest in the building. And I'm like, what do you, and he didn't do it maliciously. He did not do it. It was not malicious. It was just he thought he was doing what he was supposed to be doing. And I'm like, no. Just go back to your office up front. I'll come up and tell you if we're having problems.
Was he like a CEO or something? Or
no, he was the TM. He was the transportation manager, and I was his coordinator.
gotcha.
I hired on as the traffic coordinator, and then I think they let the shipping manager go or something, or he left. And so I wound up being in charge of trans and shipping. And then my co-worker, he was over receiving and put away. So we kind of split the warehouse down the middle, and which is great for me because I could control my own fate. You know, being the traffic coordinator. If you were in charge of the shipping part, then I could dictate. They go well together. They should be paired together. You know,
Right.
You can coordinate very well with that. So that was like my second job in this industry. And my boss was a great boss. Don't get me wrong. He's a little eccentric, but you have to be eccentric to be in this industry. But he was, you know, he's a good boss. He had a heart of gold. He just didn't know how to talk to these people. He just didn't know how to talk to them, man. And he, you know, I take him with a grain of sand, you know, because being from Mississippi, you run into all kinds of people saying all kinds of stuff. And you just, yeah, okay, you know, dude's having a bad day. I get it, whatever. And you go on. You don't take it, you take it like a grain of salt, right? But he could not relate to these people because he was hardly ever on the floor, kind of to your point, managing behind a desk.
Yep.
But I was out there every day. You know, I was walking the floor 3, 4, 5 times a day during my shift because I would, you know, I had developed little paths and trails because I'd go up and, I had to deal with customer service. I had to deal with, this. I had to deal with this group. I had to deal with that group. I had to go to HR and sign all my time cards, all this, so I'd make a round.
Yeah.
I would just make a round. I'd go through my ops. I'd go hit HR, sign the time cards, hit through customer service, stop off and give my boss an update, and then head back to my office in the bowels of the warehouse.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised about that guy that you said was your boss, because when I was like the GM, warehouse manager of operations, transportation, did negotiations, all of that, I literally brought my jeans and a t-shirt and sneakers, and I was in the trailers with my team loading trucks up the end of the month until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was like, get involved. You find out so much more stuff doing it.
Oh yeah.
How to do it more efficiently, to get trucks out when you're doing 20, 30, 40, 50 trucks at the end of the month in a single day. That it was all good until my boss, when he was helping me as well, because I got him to do it. Just a real quick story, and then we'll end the show, because you'll think this is hilarious. So we're packing up 3,200 floor-loaded receivers for Onkyo USA. Okay, so we put the first layer in there and everything, and we're packing it up. And I said, you know what, bring the pallets in with the forklift, and then leave the pallets here and go get a next one, and we'll just keep on packing it, right? So we get about probably 2 layers from the tail of the trailer, and literally my boss says, you know what, I'm going to buy some pizza. Reaches into his back pocket and he goes, where's my wallet?
Oh no.
And I looked at him and I was like, Nick, what are you talking about? You probably left it on your desk. Oh, I never do that and everything. Go in the office, please. Look for your wallet. He walks in and he goes, Jeff, it's not there. He goes, how about your coat jacket? Yeah, in there. No. I think I lost it in the nose of the trailer. I went, are you like we just spent 3 hours like loading it before clamp trucks and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And sure enough, we put like the little roller assembly on top of the boxes, and here I am. It's in the middle of the summer. It's about 140 at the rooftop. We sweated our asses off. We started moving, and there it was on the second level from the nose. His wallet was on a box that just because he turned around and he clipped his pocket and it fell out on the box. And we just kept on throwing the boxes in there. So that was the funny thing. He's still like one of my best friends from 38, 39 years ago. And so every time I see him, I go, Nick, you got a wallet? So, I mean, he was the one that helped me move up and promoted me, and I took his job and stuff like that. But those are the things that you remember. There are some good things in logistics and supply chain that you'll remember for the rest of your life that just changes your whole day when you need a laugh,
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, you want to take us out of here, brother?
Yeah, absolutely. John, thanks again, man. I appreciate it. I know that you've got a few deadlines with a lot of projects that you're working on. I know next week you're not going to be available, so we will have our next show on the 24th, understandably, because priorities, especially in this business, take number one over podcast. So I appreciate that. Hopefully, and hopefully on the 24th, we're going to have several guests. I'll just put that out there, where it will be a very, very good conversation on things that people want to hear about. I'll just put it that way. So with that said, hey, John, enjoy the rest of your day, your weekend. I'll see you in a couple weeks. And everybody out there, have a great weekend as well. I'm the Bodacious Cowboy, and this is the Old Dog Logistics Podcast. We'll see you in the 24th.
See you, folks.